Okay, we'll go ahead and get started. Well, everyone, I want to thank you for joining us today. Today, our session is going to be looking into Stylebooks and how they can help us over the traditional means of managing the site design that we have with a theme. They offer a better alternative. We will be recording these sessions like we have been, but only now we're going to start publishing them on YouTube. We will, at the end, obviously continue to have plenty of time to take questions. So feel free to make use of the Q&A box or the chat box and go ahead and put your questions in there, or just wait till the end and ask it, out loud. Again, please let your teammates know and even have them join us, because in the future, we will reschedule these sessions in the coming months. And one of the great benefits of joining a live session versus just watching the recording is you get to ask questions and we can dialogue, because we really are interested in what the solutions are that you're building with Liferay, and getting your feedback when you're working with the features, and giving that feedback back to products so that we can ultimately Liferay can help serve you better. So with that said, our session today is entitled Stylebooks 101, an introduction to style consistency. So our objective for today is to understand the concept and use of Stylebooks and how their benefits can improve the style consistency for the business. This is the session breakdown that we're going to look at. We're going to look at a little bit of kind of an overview of Stylebooks and some definitions. We're going to look at some strategies for site design and page management. I'm going to do a technical overview briefly of the tokens, the JSON file, and how you would develop those, and how they are part of the theme. We're going to look at creating and using Stylebooks, and of course, leveraging the tokens. And then also at the end, how you would migrate them through the landscape. This is the standard toolkit I've been using in my environment. And so let's go ahead and get started. So taking a step back, just kind of to make sure we're all, like setting the stage and make sure we're all on the same page as we think through why Stylebooks are, really are a benefit over the traditional model with themes. Let's just look at, what exactly is a theme? Well, a theme is a package with a standard structure, which enables the look and feel and changes through a hot deployable module. That's the key. Themes contain HTML, FreeMarker, CSS, JavaScript, any other number of assets that we might include. Whereas if we look at a style book, you might say, well, what is this? Well, you're all probably familiar from your college or university days with style guides for writing papers such as APA, MLA, Chicago. These all provide a set of standards for writing and formatting, citing references, etc. Well, in a very similar manner, that's exactly what a style book is. It's a set of visual rules that specify the aspects such as spacing between the elements, colors, fonts, for a site, how big the H1 or H2 is within my site. Each of these aspects or settings applies equally to every page using the style book and can be defined via the product menu. That's the key difference. Theme, it requires release management processes, and it requires that migration to go move it upstream through my landscape. But however, style book, I can configure these values all within the UI. So if we go back and review, what our previous model was for site design, in 7.2 and before, traditionally we used a theme, which contained the designs for common elements such as the header, the footer, for a site, along with the, globally, general styling for this, for the site. This would include any type of third-party libraries, JavaScript, CSS, etc. Commonly search and other widgets were embedded into the theme's portal normal FreeMarker template. We had theme settings. We had the XML file. The theme settings could be defined in order to enable site administrators to specify various configurations that were required on a page, such as selectively showing maybe a search bar or, certain other widgets, on certain pages. We also had another thing we commonly use theme settings for is maybe specifying the value, say of a contact email, or maybe an embedded journal article that we might be using. Widget pages are then, these were structured via layout templates, right? Which defines the rows and, the columns of how the widgets and the portlets could, be placed on the page. While they were very simple to create, there really wasn't much to them. Any new layout design would require a layout template to be built by a developer and then likewise, deployed, through the landscape. So any of these modifications to either the theme or the layout template, it always required a development resource, and all of that takes time, and to execute, to go through that process, and the business kind of has to wait. If we look at 7.3 and moving forward, 7.3 introduced Stylebooks and master pages. And they really were designed for, and it was kind of to allow for the enhancements to content pages, at this point, because if we look at content pages, like for example, with master pages, this is the equivalent to what we had with the layout templates, previously, within the widget pages. And what this actually does is master pages, allows us through the UI versus a deployment module to be able to, assign, lay out the theme, the rows and the columns. It enables a non-developer to create these layouts. There's several new features that it was introduced along with Stylebooks and master pages. If we go to 7.4, front-end client extensions, this was a way that we could provide third-party libraries, CSS and JavaScript. So we would have our theme. And so just let me back up 1 second here. A theme is going to provide basically these tokens or rules that can then now be, or I shouldn't say rules, but tokens or values that will now be, Stylebooks will now assign values to. So you have to have a theme that's going to provide or have the tokens define the definitions basically, and then Stylebooks allows you through the UI to assign the values to these definitions or CSS definitions that we would have within our theme. But now a lot of these common elements, like the headers and footers that we would have normally in that portal normal free marker template, they can now be moved over to our content page. And then instead of having a lot of our CSS values, the colors and everything, or font sizes, the font family, all of that assigned within our CSS within our theme, this can be abstracted and put into a stylebook so it can be a lot more dynamic. Likewise, for theme configurations, a lot of this can now be migrated, or theme settings, these can now be moved to other areas or newer features, such as, fragment configurations, or even client extensions themselves, or even master pages. It's just a lot more easily controlled via the UI versus having to go through and modify the theme and then go forward with a modification, or excuse me, migration. There's also a hybrid approach, which we're not going to really get into in this session. We'll look at it in the following session, the next one, session 201. But basically, it is a method where we can leverage Stylebooks and master pages on widget pages, or our existing widget pages that we most likely have because we're upgrading from an older version of Liferay. So looking a little bit more, taking a little more technical glance at what we're looking at here with Stylebooks and how they're enabled. As I mentioned, Stylebooks is, this is all kind of enabled via the theme. There's a file called the front-end token JSON file that has to be created. And within it, that JSON file is going to define, different categories, such as the color system, typography, general or spacing. You can see some examples right here for the drop-down category when we're actually in the Stylebook editor, or even typography right here. And then each category is going to have its own group of sets, basically. So you have brand colors, grays, theme colors, for example, or maybe font family. We've got headings, font weight. And then with each of those sets, we'll then also have different tokens, so brand color 1, for example, or, maybe the H1 for the heading, for example. So the style book is going to allow us to assign values to these tokens that are defined within the theme. You can see an example in the token JSON file. There's a, you can set a default value. There would be a type, it might be string for like a font family, but it might be a color picker in the case of like, say, what a, brand color 1 would be, correct? And then, this is the name of the value or the variable, the CSS variable. And then we would make use of that variable within anywhere in our CSS. So in a fragment, in the theme itself, if we're, possibly, or our, custom portlets, we would make use of it using this manner. It follows a standard CSS convention for var method with -- would indicate the variable name. One of the benefits of fragments versus widgets is, it allows you to easily, or really a business user or a content admin, to make use of the values that you would define within the style book. So, for example, the idea is, again, this is a standard set of what the styles would be for the organization. So if a maybe content admin wants to, maybe like on a slider, or maybe it's on a card, they want to change the background, instead of them having the ability to or forcing them to just choose the random color and kind of match it, best guess it maybe, they can just simply pick, oh, I want brand color 1, or I want accent color 2. And so they have freedom of flexibility, but yet they have guardrails. And we'll look more at this later on as we actually walk through an example. So let's go ahead and take a look now. So right here, I have just a Liferay instance that's up. Let me go ahead and refresh my screen and log in. This is using, right now, the default out-of-the-box classic theme, which does provide a good number of stylebook tokens. But however, we're going to change and use a different theme that Liferay also ships called Dialect. So let's go make that change right now. And we'll get it save. And then we'll really probably won't see much. You'll see a little bit of a change, like the icons, that button is purple now. But let's go ahead and create our first style book. So I am not very creative on my names. So I'm just going to call this my Dialect SB and hit save. One thing you can see right here is that, from the Stylebooks editor, I can see a preview of my pages. Right here, you can see I can choose between pages or fragments, and I have 3 pages. I can look at my search page, which really doesn't have much on it, but I can look back at the home page, and I can, see exactly what, view that page. And then as I go through my categories, I can make changes and actually visualize exactly what these changes, what kind of impact they're going to have on my site. So this is really nice for a site, a designer to be able to make use of without having to even go through the, dive into the code, right, to make all these changes. Let's see, we could look at, say, forms, for example. Maybe we'll go to the form input and let's just change this maybe to like, I don't know, yeah, something like that, brand secondary light. So you can see exactly what that would look like. We could change it that way. You know, I think we'll go back to this one. I could go to the, let's say, go to the card, for example. Let's look at the elevated one. And, I could choose this 5. Yeah, I don't like that one. Let's choose 6. It's not a little more subtle, but you get the idea. This allows you to actually preview what your changes would make. What kind of impact they would make as we go through here. One thing on the color system, so dialect and classic will have similar categories they provide you out of the box. And the fact is, like, dialect will give you all these different more variations. There's just quite a number more than what classic gives you. And we'll look at that later. Just take a deeper dive from that shortly. But for now, I want to show you one more thing on the preview. We can go to actually fragments, and I can look down, like, say, at the back, any of my fragment sets are listed right here. You can see, and I'm just going to choose, like, say, the basic components. I can visualize, what any of my components would look like based upon the styling changes that I might, make. So, I could, for example, go to, let's see, I think there's even, footers. And you could see what changes, now, given some of these changes may not show up. Like, I believe if I change this darken 5, I don't think it's using that one. It might be, actually, I don't believe that. I know that one's not. So all of your fragments have to, of course, make use of that, that style token. So if I try to change like the background here, like I really need to go look at this fragment and see if what I'm wanting to style, like maybe it's the button or the background here, if it's been enabled to utilize or leverage one of those tokens. And we'll look at that more shortly, but that's just something to keep in mind. Like default, there's some that will and some that won't. It kind of will just depend. But you have to go back and look at that, according to the fragments. And of course, like your custom, MVC portlets, you'd have to keep that in mind also. That's about it for this. Let's go ahead and hit publish. And I want to show you one more thing I did. I created this other page earlier called just a style guide. It's called Styles Guide. Let me go ahead and edit this. What this has is a widget called Dialect Themes Styles Style Guide Sample. If I look over here at the widgets, Liferay, for each of the themes, dialect and classic, it ships each of both of those themes. There's a widget that has basically a preview of all the styles. So I can see right here dialect, and I can see classic, and I've already placed the dialect one on here. The reason why I did that is because if you notice, what it does is it provides me not only a preview, but also it provides for me the name of the token. Now, the tokens follow pretty much a sensical syntax, but it is nice to have like another tab up with the styles guide there, where I can look at what those token names are. So let's go ahead and I'll show you how to apply this. Now I have a few different options if I want to apply my style book. I can either mark it as default, and have it be the default style book for my pages of my site. I could apply a style book specifically to a single page. I could also apply it to a master page, and then I could have all of my pages reference, a single master page or other master pages that would have a style book associated with it. We're going to look at in the next session, the 201, we're going to look at using master pages. But for now, I'm just going to stick with applying this style book to this page only. And as you can see that, I've already, the search bar up here already is picked up what the, input background, value that we set was. If I go to cards, I can see the elevated card has that slight variance for the background, that we gave it a few minutes ago when we were looking at the, the style book itself. All right, so like I said, there's two, dialect and classic. Let's go take a little bit closer look at dialect. Okay, so what I've done is I've pulled up just the GitHub repo for the dialect theme. And the first thing I want to do is let's just look at the build Gradle file. So in the build Gradle file, one thing I want you to notice is that the first thing you'll see is this copy classic theme. So what it's doing is when Liferay cuts a release and all the modules and everything gets compiled and built to go into that release, its dialect is basically making a copy of everything from the templates, for example, from classic. It's basically making a copy. And so you'll even notice if you go up to, if we look at the source over here, we see CSS and images, but we're not going to see any templates, right? But however, if I come up here to classic and I look at the source, I do see the templates folder that's included there. So those changes, anything that's made to classic will then also get copied down to dialect when dialect is, compiled and then shipped, in that release. That's just to let you know that the point is that dialect is based on classic. And that has actually some niceties with it later on that we're going to look at just shortly. But what I want to do next is I want to look at the token file. So I've got over here in this tab right here, I have the token file already pulled up. And on this browser window, I've got, or in this tab, I've got a plugin just so I can kind of, minify or collapse, not minify, but collapse some of these tokens. So we can see, the categories, color system, for example, typography, and, and all of these match up with what we saw, within our style book. And then within, like say the color system set or category, excuse me, the color system category, there's 10 token sets, right, that are presented. And then you can see those token sets. There's brand primary, brand secondary, and so forth. And we can see the number of tokens that are then defined, like say within brand primary. So I've got, the primary darken 5, a primary darken 4, et cetera, so forth. You can see an example here, like earlier, like one of the editor types, or it is a type string, but there was an edit. I think if you don't provide the editor type, then it just defaults to string. But if you provide an editor type, like I was saying, like color picker, for example, some of this basically, that's the same as what if you already worked with fragments, some of the fragment configuration types. But I have right here color picker because it's just for, that's the configuration type for offering, the user to select a different color. We can see the variable name right here, and so forth. So I'm just showing this, basically, this is how it's organized. JSON files are always a lot fun to try to edit, but it's nice to just make use of what Liferay already ships within these. We will look at shortly. I'll show you how, like, hey, what would be our options if we want to extend or add some more? That's a good question we'll look at later on. Let's see. The other thing I want to go back to is, like I said, so dialect is based upon the classic theme. One of the things you also have to remember is that therefore classic, this brings up a really good point, is that classic is also built includes includes clay, right? Um, and so the clay variables and clay CSS is also something that you have available for you to use, and that it's what's styling already a lot of these components, out of the box. Clay is built on Bootstrap, and then clay is included in the classic, and then the classic theme, a lot of that is then being used within dialect also. One thing I did want to point out, I kind of mentioned it briefly, was that the variable names, you've got the style guide that helps you with these names, but most of these, like I said, you'll get them in your mind when you're working with them, and they pretty much make logical sense. They're what you'll find with the dialect is that normally it starts with like the object of what it's trying to modify, like the object or item, like color or font, or tab or button. And whereas classic, it kind of a lot of times will follow like with maybe not always, but the CSS property followed by the stated value. So like you might see border radius large or border radius small or SM. So that once you get to working with it, it kind of makes sense. And then when you're working with your fragments or your custom, portlet and the styling for it, it kind of makes sense. But having this style guide is also very helpful. Ultimately the naming convention is really up to you. If you decide to even create your own theme and create enable it with the tokens. Okay, let's go back over here. And remember, I mentioned that since dialect is built off of classic or kind of based off of classic, and then clay is included too, you might have existing fragments that are already built. Maybe they utilize some of the classic tokens. Well, dialect tries to make an attempt to kind of preserve some compatibility there. So if we look over here at dialect and we see there's this classic style book compatibility, and we can see on the left-hand side, a list of what would be the classic token name. So brand color 1, like our gray 100, gray 400, our primary. And you can see where there's like an equivalent, or what would be the dialect equivalent token is being assigned to that. So that way, you could, maybe you're going to use the dialect tokens elsewhere, somewhere, but maybe you've got some fragments that were, you had created that make use of the classic themes tokens. So you kind of have that compatibility where you can use either or. So that is just really nice. Again, it's just an FYI because, ultimately what I'm going to end up showing you in the next session is where we've seen a lot of customers where they can just not have to use or maintain their theme, and they just use classic or dialect and then style books out of the box. And so it's just one of the benefits of kind of knowing and understanding, hey, here's what's available for you to use. With that said, dialect and even clay, makes the use of some of the clay mix-ins that are available. So for example, if we go to let's see, components, and I believe like the cards, yeah, clay card variant. So this is a mix-in, and that comes from up here. If I go down to let me find it. Yeah, clay card variant. This is one of the clay mix-ins, and dialect's making use of that. So it's just something to let you know, because when you're there's also variables too, and so when you're making styling choices, whether it's like your own custom fragment, there might be these mix-ins or maybe even variables that you might want to make use of. Or what you'll find also in if you look at the dialect code some, you'll see where, because clay is styling a lot of the components in those fragments that Liferay has, and these variables are assigned, you can assign a dialect variable or token to one of those, one of the dialect tokens that are defined. You can assign it to a clay variable. And so that basically you can influence the styling of many of these clay provided components via your dialect theme or even dialect style book, I should say. So again, just I wanted to let you know how kind of all that works and kind of plays with each other. You can see if you do an inspect on let's see, well, actually, let me do this. Let's see, I'll just go to this one and look at the input background color, form input background color. So this is coming from dialect, but that's the variable that's being used. And you can see several others. You can actually, if you scroll on down, if you inspect, let me go to the bottom. In root, you'll see, yeah, see there's some of the brand color, the classic ones that are defined, but you can see like a whole listing of, these tokens that are available for you to use and make use of. As you're designing your own fragments, fragment sets, kind of, etc. I think that's about it for here. One more thing before we move on and look at like applying it and leveraging some of the tokens. I wanted to mention this dialect style book generator. Okay, so like I said, dialect has all of these, just different variations for all the colors. And if you were to edit the style book for dialect or create one and edit the colors for all of this, that kind of can take some time. So the designers for dialect at Liferay, they provided this this online generator, which is very helpful because what it will do is you can say, hey, here's the darkest color, here's the lightest color, for primary and secondary. And then what it's going to do is you can see right here, it calculates all those variations. Let's see, let's go ahead and make a couple more changes to this. I'll do the, accent color 3, and then I'm going to change the accent color 4. But you can see how, the secondary and the primary, it's done all those calculations for me. It's really nice. I'm going to go ahead and give it a name, my dialect 2 SP, or yeah, that's fine. Or maybe dialect SB2. How about that? And then we'll hit download. I'll put it onto my desktop and hit save. And then we'll go ahead and import that. Now, I do not believe that this is officially supported, by Liferay. It's just a free tool that's out there. But however, I don't think there's really probably much that you would really need to support for it. I'm feel obliged just to say that. Let's see. Let's go to Stylebooks and let's import this. Let's add. Chris, you need to go over here and do import. So this is a zip file. This is not using the LAR format that some of you might be familiar with. Here's my SB2 style book. And what this basically has is a manifest along with it's a JSON file format, and then also the JSON format for the actual style book definition too. So now I've got this our dialect SP2. So let's go ahead, and one thing I'm going to do is we're going to go ahead and just mark this as default for all our pages. So you'll notice right now it moved from just the styles from theme being the default to now this has the check mark, so it's marked as default. I'll go ahead and edit this, and we'll make a few more changes, but you can see here's all my nice variations for my primary and secondary colors. We're going to go ahead and go back down to that card, and I want to change the hover for the elevated. Let's see. There we go. Background elevated. I'm going to go ahead and change this to be, yeah, I think we'll go with maybe 4. And then let's go change maybe the forms. I want to do the input label again, or the input background. And we're going to change it to maybe 5. Yeah, I think that looks fine. So we'll go ahead and publish this. I get the prompt that's going to publish to all of them. If we go to our page now, you can see some of the difference, because now this has been marked as the default, style book, so it's being applied to all of the pages. So let's go ahead and see about applying, some of these, leveraging some of these tokens. So I'm going to go ahead and edit right here. And the first way that is and easiest is just simply, it's one of the whole benefits behind fragments is to just use the style configuration or style editor for a fragment. So, content admin can come over here, they can go to styles, and then let's see, they choose maybe like the background. They can choose, the random, RGB, or pick a color or enter the hex, but they have this right here at their disposal. They can choose from what that style book, the colors have been assigned are. So for example, I could choose, brand color 4, and, that changes the whole background, there. We did that for the grid. I could come in for, say, just the tab, for example, and maybe we want to change this maybe to be, maybe we'll make it a little bit lighter. We could do that. I mean, my skill set is not in styling, but you get the idea. It's, this is providing that kind of flexibility, but yet like with guardrails, right? In the same way, if I wanted to, style the card and I wanted to choose, maybe kind of the some of these here, these font weight bolder and bold. This is basically, these are predefined within that style book, and I could choose which one from the drop down. So that's one way, and that's the easiest, is just using like basically the styles tab within a fragment configuration screen. The next way is very similar, but we can actually just make use of, like, say, editing very much the same way like we would with like the look and feel. We can actually just add custom CSS to the fragment, for example. So right here I can make use of the color brand primary, which again, that is, I believe that one would be yeah, actually no, that's still a dialect token. I could probably do brand color primary, and that would be the classic variant that it still keeps compatibility with. So that would be another way. And then finally, let's look at another way. Let me go ahead and publish this real quickly. Let's go to our design fragments. Let's go to the basic components, and let's make a quick copy of this card. We're going to say extra. I'm not very creative on my fragment sets. So I'm going to go ahead and edit this. I'm going to call this card or component 2. And then we're going to modify our CSS a little bit. And what we're going to do is on the hover, we're going to make use of that hover color that we've assigned. And you can see right here, I can see the effect of that right there automatically. So I'm going to go ahead and hit publish. And then let's go ahead and go back to our home page, and let's place that on the home page. Go to fragments, scroll to the bottom, extra, and we're going to place that there. So now if I hover over it, you can see the difference. So, it's not really that hard. It's just, or too technical. It's just the fact that you kind of have to keep these tokens in mind when you're creating the fragments, or you're laying, either if you're making use of the out-of-the-box ones, you get to see which ones are maybe using them, or you might have to go modify your own and create your own fragment set and make use of them. It really is just up to you, but you've got this flexibility and beauty that now you can centralize the assignment and control of the look and feel all within the control panel and within one place. And like I said, even if you look at, like, say, think about the external in 7.4, you've got the remote client extensions, which allows you to say you got this React application that's running somewhere else in your environment, and you're going to have that registered within Liferay and presented on a page. You can have that remote React application when it's inside Liferay. It utilizes those tokens, and it has that same look and feel. So you can create like basically a unified styling across the applications and the development for your solution, your site. Okay, let's go ahead and I think just publish this. I think we're good here. Again, like I mentioned, I showed you a second ago, just using like the developer tools, you may have to look, do a little like initial introspection or investigation to kind of understand what tokens are available and where they should be applied. And again, that style guide widget is really a great place to look at. So the next thing I want to do is let's go back over here. Let's go to design and Stylebooks, and let's discuss like how we would maybe like, handle variations. So, like I said, before, we had, if we wanted to handle, those like any kind of styling or color variation, we had to edit that XML file, that look and feel XML file that was in our theme. And we had to create a separate folder, and each of our, the variations for the styles would all be placed within that folder. But this is so much easier now because, I can simply just make a copy, and I can edit this copy, and, the brand color primary, maybe I want this to be red, and I can do that and immediately, maybe that's all I want, right? Maybe or there's some other changes, right? And I can hit publish, and then I've now got this other dialect. I've got this other style book that I can make use of. And so I've seen this case where a variation is used within, like, maybe production has the real production scheme, but then maybe UAT or development has a slightly different variation, just so that when you're a developer or an admin, you kind of know which environment you're in. Or maybe you've got different lines of business, in your organization, and they have their own page or pages, or even multiple, sites within your instance. And, they have basically the same theme, but there's a slight variation between that. This is a lot easier to do, by just making a copy of it real quickly. It's a lot easier to handle. So the next thing I want to mention is, the question we kind of touched on a little bit. Okay, Chris, what if I need to add more tokens to our style book, than what they have available? Maybe I want like tertiary colors, for example. Well, that's what we're going to go ahead and look at next. So I'm going to go back over to, my workspace, and I'm going to, let's see, I'm going to go ahead and create a themes folder because I do not have one right now. I'm going to go ahead and go into that. And then, so let me back up and say this. Unfortunately, right now, the only way to extend and add more tokens is to create your own theme. But however, there is a new feature that is in the works that is going to change this. It's just not available right now. When this feature becomes available, then basically you won't even, you kind of don't need the theme. Everything else, if we think about it, a theme like our third-party libraries, those have been abstracted through configuration now. Our values for our CSS have now been abstracted. Our layout of even the free marker template, that has been abstracted out to master pages to lay out those common elements. There's going to be a feature coming later on where we can abstract the defining of those tokens outside also, so we don't have to worry about the theme. And again, a lot of this is all coming out of Liferay's investment into a SaaS offering. And so things have to be thought about and allowed differently than what they would when you're doing standard, migrations like you would in the old world. So with all that said, this may seem like a lot of work, you might say, just to simply, hey, I want to add like maybe 3 tokens or maybe 1 token set. And I say, I totally understand and agree, but if you'll just bear with us, there's a new feature coming later on that will help. I don't know when it's going to be, but I believe it's going to be sometime this next year. I don't know if it's like the first quarter or second quarter from product. I don't know what the progress is, but I know it's in the middle of development. So that said, what you can do is when you create a theme, we have 2 different options. You can either use a Blade template or you can use the npm based Liferay theme generator. Well, I would say what you would do is just use the npm based theme generator is fine. And except we're going to do one little slight change on it. Let me go ahead and let this thing run and you'll see it. You'll kind of get an idea if you watch it in a minute. Yeah, okay, it's asking me what I want to call my theme. I'll just say my Liferay theme. That's all quite fine. 7.4, no, that's awesome, that's fine. Now look what it does right here. It's actually just going to go out to the repository and it's going to copy down and make a copy of the classic theme. There is also one for dialect. I'll show you that in a minute. A while back, if you worked some of the older versions of Liferay, you might remember that we allowed you to kind of inherit from classic, but that kind of presented some problems. If there was changes, then you could have changes that would break in yours. Hang on, let me get the answer this question real quickly for absolute path, and we'll, yep, and that's it. Okay, but that created some kind of compatibility problems with Liferay if you patch or update Liferay or upgrade. So what they've done now is you can use this, what's a sub generator, is what it actually is. And I'm going to do I'll show you this, dash generators dash help, and we'll hit enter real quickly. And if you look right down here at the bottom, these are sub generators of Liferay theme. You have admin, classic, facet theme, layout, and theme. Actually, I did think you had a dialect one, but you don't. Okay, so you can, you could go to the source and pull it if you wanted to, if you're doing that. But you can easily, it's going to make a copy of the classic. So if we go now to themes, and I've got my theme right here, and then right here in WebInf, I've got my, token definition file. The reason why I say that is because if I don't use that sub generator and I just create the theme myself, like via the Blade template, or just using Liferay theme and not telling it to use classic, then it's going to create my theme compatible for 7.4, but it will not create for me a token JSON file. And that's optional and you have to create it. So that's kind of takes me a lot longer. I'd rather kickstart and go from classic. So we're going to go ahead and add a few. So for example, so I'm going to we'll add like a new set for like a color light and color dark. Let me go down. Let's see. Luckily, I remember I've got written down what the line number will be for this. So I'm gonna, because it's long. I'm going to buck this. Yeah, so you can see I've got header is the name of the set in color dark and color light. Okay, and I'm going to save that. And that's all I'm going to do. Okay, now I'm going to save and we're going to deploy this. One thing I will tell you, just because I learned this earlier, I was setting this up for the next session and I had this older copy of the Westeros theme from 7.0 unzipped in my modules folder, and it was blowing up on the compile because it was trying to, when I run the build in a minute for this and deploy it, it was trying to also compile and build that one too. So I zipped it up. So just make sure, like, if that might be an error you might run into if you've got some kind of situation like that. I typically, when I do an upgrade, I like to have a new workspace. I'll have the other one. And then a lot of times what I'll do is I will have it like a branch, a repo. So one might be the 7.0 branch, for example, and then the other, the workspace is new. And so this could be the 7.4 branch. But just, I'm letting you know in case, that happens, that when the first time I did this for a group, I had that problem happen. So that said, this time I should be able to execute this perfectly fine and it will deploy. So one thing I wanted to mention is, even though I'm using the theme generator, npm-based theme generator, I can still use Blade GW deploy, which is really nice. It's using the Gradle wrapper, so all of my other modules would also get built to the same thing, especially if you have this part of a pipeline. So I'm going to go ahead and hit execute this, and this should only take a minute. It shouldn't take too terribly long. It's a kick of a Gradle daemon. I should have started this a minute ago while I was providing my explanation. Hmm. But we're almost done. We're going to basically just touch on one more thing. Actually, while this is happening, we'll go ahead and come back over here and we can move on for a second, and then we'll return. So the next thing I wanted to talk about was migrating Stylebooks. You kind of already got a glimpse of this, when we use the Stylebooks dialect generator and I imported the Stylebook. So one thing you can do is, there is still this import export right here, and that is for Lars, but that's not what I would recommend at all. I would recommend you can actually go to your individual style book that you've created, maybe in your dev environment, for example, and you can export it. And so if I export this, I'll go ahead and export it to my desktop. That's fine. And I will do that. And so we can see right here, I mentioned this to you earlier, that it had two JSON files. So this one that's actually has all the definitions in there. But this one, let me open this up this way. How about that? You can see it's just simply a simple manifest that tells you the name and then the path to the JSON file that actually has all of the tokens defined. And that's really it. And then, of course, this one is actually, the actual token file with the assigned values. So you can see the other ones like front-end tokens JSON or definitions.json, and this one is front-end tokens values. So that's basically what's in that, real simple zip file. And so to move it through your landscape, unfortunately you can't drop this in the deploy folder, but you can just via the UI, you can go to import, and like we did earlier, when we imported that theme. Okay, with that said, let's see if, let me close this and see if we are done. Yes, looks like it's done. It finished. And we have our theme deployed. Excellent. Okay, so now basically we should be able to go over here. Let's go to site builder pages. Let's do the configuration, change the current theme, and we see my Liferay theme. And save. And now I'm going to go to design style books. Now, one thing to note, I've just changed that theme. If I go to what the default is or one of these dialect-based ones, it's going to give me an error, most likely, because the theme that I currently have assigned is my Liferay theme, okay? And it has, it's obviously it's based off of classic, and so it doesn't match up with what those values are. So it kind of throws an error. That's one thing, see now I have it. If I go to create, this one, if I create a new one, we can say new recipe. You can see, that it's based off, it shows that it's based, I've got my new theme. We were looking at the color. I believe we had colors. Where did I place that? Greens. Obviously, green colors. I'll have to go back and look. But I kind of lost myself a minute there for a second. So you just, unfortunately, what you can't do is in that style book editor, I can't have like a create or modify a style book that is not associated with my current theme that's on my pages. Unfortunately, you can't do that. Maybe that's something that the product is looking at as an enhancement, but right now it kind of just works along the lines that, hey, whatever theme you've got set for your pages, that's really the one that you're going to be, kind of creating a style book for. So actually, if I go to general, yeah, this is where I place those headers. I had to look at my notes. So you can see we added these tokens called header color dark and header color light. Now, I'm not making use of them anywhere, but I just defined them. So now, maybe I create a custom fragment that's got a header and I've got a footer, and I make use of those values, and then I go place them on the master page. So that's really about it. I think we've kind of covered everything, as far as the foundations in this session. We've created and applied a style book. We've explored tokens, and how Dialect Hat uses them and how it creates them. We've looked at creating a new theme in order to add some more tokens. We've imported and exported, some style books. So in the next session, you don't want to miss it. We look at really migrating our styles from an old theme over to using style books and master pages. And just, spoiler alert, what I've done is I took a Liferay 7.0 instance and used the old Westeros theme, created a site which has, obviously a lot of widget pages with structured content. And we're going to basically recreate that old Westeros theme for our new upgraded 7.4 instance, except we're going to use the newer platform features, with style books and master pages. So you definitely don't want to miss that session. So with that said, does anybody have any questions?